Welcome to the first of our NFHS officials consortiums, our virtual edition. So these are a spinoff of two of our live officials consortiums that we did last year, and a continuing effort for recruiting and retaining officials within interscholastic athletics. So tonight we're kicking it off with Jason Nickleby. He is an assistant director and the head of officials for the Minnesota State High School League. And they had a great consortium of their own and have come up with some initiatives out of that. And tonight he'll be sharing that, and it'll be kind of presented as an idea that works. So this is something that can be done in state associations or other organizations. And we're excited to have Jason kicking off this virtual series of consortiums for us. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Jason.
All right, thanks, Dana. I figure that you can only go up from here, so happy to help kick off your consortium presentation. So thanks for the opportunity to visit with everybody. Just to kind of give you an idea of our staff that works at the league, and Dana works pretty closely with many of these folks as well, but Pam Inniger is my assistant at the league and basically runs the show. And I'm just working alongside her, but she really is dynamite and does a lot for our officials and our program. And then we have state and regional coordinators, and they're kind of our rules interpreters, our go-to people in each sport. And we have 100 unique associations in Minnesota that serve our officials, and roughly 70% of our officials are in an association. And then each of those associations has a charter clinician, so they're kind of the go-to person and connection to their association, and they're part of the state and their sport. And then we have roughly 90 observers that we send out to assist our officials. So that's kind of the top level snapshot of our program and who assists in making things go. So I wanted to start with just to kind of give you an update or an idea of where we started and arrived at that consortium piece. And so after the NFHS consortium that I attended along with Eric Martins, our executive director, we worked in partnership with our MSHSL officiating DEI council, which is charged with trying to recruit more women and candidates of color into officiating. And they really wanted to get some more data from our officials to have a better understanding of what their experience is like as an official, and other items that you typically see in officiating surveys such as why did you start or stop? What do you like the most or least about that? Is mentorship and training important to you? And that data was going to inform our officiating DEI council, but also inform our consortium as we move forward in their planning. And that survey was sent out to roughly 15,000 individuals that were in our system over the last 15 to 20 years. And from that 15,000 data points, we received 2,600 responses, 2,300 of which are currently officiating. And last year we had 5,700 unique officials working. So to get close to 50% of folks that are officiating to complete a survey, we were excited about that. My apologies to my friends at Referee Magazine and NASO, as that survey went out about the same time as theirs, but it was data that we really needed that was specific to what we were doing to help us plan as we move forward relative to recruitment and retention of officials. Some major takeaways from that survey. First, what do you enjoy most about it? And this shouldn't come as a shock to most people on this call. Officiating is supposed to be fun. You meet new people. Yeah, you get some extra income, stay fit. But the biggest piece that folks mentioned as a reason for enjoying officiating is giving back to the sport or activity, most of which they received a number of opportunities themselves when they were in high school. So trying to really demonstrate and promote the positive aspects of officiating. Why do we do it? Versus, and this has always been my philosophy, and it's not shared by others necessarily, but my philosophy has always been focus on the positive of officiating versus worrying about or complaining about things that we don't have. You know, we can always complain about we don't have enough officials, they're not good enough, the behavior's terrible, or whatever it is. I'd much rather focus on officiating is great, and here's why you should do it. And that's kind of that whole say yes to officiating perspective that referee and NASO has really promoted over the last several years. So that's what we try to focus on. And this is a data point that helps point us in the directions that are positive reasons for officiating. And, you know, we've discussed this with our officials and with our schools in the past. Why should you become an official? Again, the positive aspects, the relationship building, fun, staying involved in your favorite sport, which was named as the #1 reason, lifelong skill development, and of course there is an income piece to it. And we really tried to promote as well that lifelong skill development piece from a standpoint of most of our new officials are the parents of students that are moving on from their playing experience, and moving on to college or just moving out of the sport. And those parents have spent a lot of time around that sport and enjoy it, seem to have a good feel for the game. They've been telling us for the last 12 years that they're experts. So let's see if you really are. Let's get you out there and let's get you officiating. So we've tried to promote those pieces, especially with our schools. Another aspect we wanted to get from them was, how did you get started, or what is the major piece that assisted you in getting into the officiating avocation? And the biggest one is fellow official recruited me. And another big one is a coach or activities director recruited me, still in the top 5. And so the personal connection is critical. And we've told our schools that over and over. You know your communities better than we do. You need to share the message with your student athletes, with your coaches, with your community members. They're much more likely to get involved when you have that personal touch. And this data bears that out, that when other officials or other individuals in the community recruit them into officiating, they're more likely to start as well. And then on the flip side, I know that I said I'm promoting the positive. We also need to know what are the barriers so that we can try to work at removing those, or at least reducing those barriers to try to keep people in officiating and then get them in as well. And it's important to note that of the officials that completed the survey, 95% of them indicated that their officiating experience is good or great, which is way higher than I ever expected. But at the same time, every single one of them has had a negative situation, a very negative situation with a spectator or a coach. And those are pieces that we're sharing with our schools currently in our area meetings to let them know that as much as our officials enjoy what they do, they're always one negative experience away from being done. And I try to put it on the level that our school administrators understand, and that is, it's much easier for you to keep your experienced coaches and your experienced teachers in your building than to keep recruit all the time and train. And I said officiating is exactly the same. We'd much rather keep really good ones. Yeah, do we want to bring new ones in? We do, but it's always important to keep our experienced officials in the game, and the less negative situations or barriers they run into, the less chance we have for losing them. So that was some data that we pulled from that survey to help with planning as we move forward relative to communicating with our schools and next step in recruitment and retention. So that brings us to the officiating consortium. So as many of you know, the NFHS and Dana hosted a consortium. They hosted Consortium 1.0, where a number of folks from around the country, various levels, participated in talking about what are our next steps, what are our plans for promoting officiating removing barriers, and making it a desirable avocation. And then that translated into, okay, now that we know what the challenges are, what do we do about it? How do we implement these things? And that was Consortium 2.0, which I attended along with our executive director, and we found that really valuable information, and it was great to connect with our colleagues from around the country. But at the same time, we felt that anything in education is much more effective when there is a local flavor versus maybe a national approach. It just has a lot more effectiveness when it's coming from that local perspective. And so we felt that a consortium of our own member schools would be really beneficial. And what we did with that was we had, with 1.0, we had 2 superintendents, 2 principals, 2 ADs, 2 coaches, 2 officials, 2 of our region reps. Dana was there, my executive director, Eric Martins, director of information technology, Laura McIntoon, and myself. And we brought those folks into the office to talk about what are the challenges and issues we're seeing out there. And then once we've identified those, what are some things that we can do about it at the local level? And I've always felt that messaging about officiating, whether it's treating them well or recruitment or retention or hosting of officials, whatever it is, I've always felt that the messaging just has much better impact, higher impact when it comes from their peers. So when Jason says it, you know, they probably say, oh, here comes the officials guy again, promoting the officials and everything about them, versus when a superintendent says it, or an AD says it, or a coach says it, it's gonna hit differently with their peers. And so I was hopeful that in developing this consortium membership that way, that we would have much better impact in the long term relative to success on these initiatives that they developed. So really looking at putting together best practices for our schools and our communities, and in doing so, putting together a planning document. What are we doing now that's effective? What should we implement it in the coming year? And then what initiatives are we looking at as we explore into the future? And all of that's done with the idea in mind. The main piece of that is officials are indispensable as part of our event, and our schools need to understand that. Our coaches, our ADs, our communities, they need to understand how important officials are to our events. And again, putting it in terms that our schools and administrators understand. When officials do a nice job, they're treated well, they want to go and come to your school because they're treated well, they do a nice job, they get yelled at less, they like it more, they stick around, your events go well, you have less issues to deal with. So if you want to put it in selfish terms, if you have good officials, you're going to have less issues to deal with. And if we don't treat them well and they don't stick around, you're going to have much more issues that you have to deal with. So that was the premise that we based these initiatives and these pieces on, is that officials are indispensable as part of our event, and what do we do to support them in their work. So after meeting with these folks, and by the way, half of these members have an officiating background and half of them don't. I felt it was important to have administrators, coaches, and so forth that have officiating experience, and then also very important to have ones that don't, because we need them to come to us with that perspective that is different than that of an official, and how they manage their school day, how they manage their events, and how do we piece that together to make it a supportive environment for officials. So that was the main takeaway, I would say, is how do we make it a great environment for everyone? We do that through providing manageable solutions for hosting officials and for treating them well. And that's developed by their peers. So hopefully it has a higher effect, better impact, as we talked about. And from a manageable solution standpoint, I say that in that we have 75 of our 525 member schools. 75 of them are starting with a brand new activities administrator this fall. And probably a couple weeks in, I'm guessing half of them are already questioning why they became an AD. It's a really challenging job. And so how do we give them solutions that they can implement without being overwhelmed, and try to put them in a place where they can be successful? The next piece was a pre-contest meeting. In football, we call that the 100-minute meeting, where we talk about every possible thing you can think of, which is weather and logistics and emergency steps and so forth. And again, trying to make it manageable for our schools and provide that initial welcoming environment to not just the officials, but the opposing team as well. A message where we bring both coaches together, the officials together, and that faculty staff member welcomes them to their school or to that site. Here are the contacts you need if something happens, whether it's weather or emergency otherwise, and then emergency action planning. What are we doing if we have lightning? What are we doing if we have, any other kind of emergency that takes place, whether it's medical or otherwise? So school personnel and officials both just feel much more at ease when they know that those things are addressed and taken care of, because we all know that the norm is something happens and then we don't know what to do about it, and we don't know who's taking care of that. So that it was giving them that template of what to say and how to address coaches and the officials prior to the game to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then finally, a school toolkit was developed. We'll go over that here in a little bit, with officiating resources for our schools, media, and associations to use as we move through the year for recruitment and retention purposes. And a major piece that we really have tried to drive home to our schools this week and next with our area meetings with our schools is the value of an eligible official. They have training, they have the wisdom of experience. There's that liability insurance and protection piece because they're trained and eligible. And we want to make officiating desirable to join, and we want to make officiating desirable to continue. That's what recruitment and retention is about. And our schools provide a critical role in that process. If they don't make officiating desirable to join or continue, officials are not going to want it. They're not going to want to join, and they're not going to want to keep doing it. So really important for our schools to understand that it's not just Jason's job or the association's job to recruit and retain. It's all of our responsibility to do so. So this next step document that we created with our current initiatives, but also our new ideas to implement, and then items to look at as we move forward. And so we can share this piece with others. I have shared it with Dana. This is a working document. As we have ideas that we want to implement and they become current, we can move them over to the current initiative box. We can always move ideas into something we want to implement. And then as we come up with new ideas or new initiatives, we can place those in that ideas to study further. And I would say even on the reps front, we've already started down that path and sign an agreement with them. So that probably can move into more of the implementation side of things. But we have 3 areas on this document. One is recruitment and growth. So what are our recruitment and growth initiatives? The next piece is what is our retention planning, both current initiatives, ideas that we want to implement in this upcoming school year, and then ideas that we want to look at further. And then finally, overall respect and game experience. And a comment that came from our largest school principal who is on the consortium, he said, if we're making the experience and the environment great for our officials and for our students, it's likely it's going to be great for everyone. It's unlikely that we would make an experience great for officials and then everyone else is going to say, yep, this is terrible. I don't want to be part of this environment. That's pretty unlikely. And that came from one of the principal reps on the consortium, who's the principal of our largest school. Meanwhile, we had reps on that consortium from all types of schools and reps in our state. So we had private school, public, we had large and small, metro area, rural, Minnesota. So that was all represented, and a large number of sports as well. So pretty good cross section that came up with these ideas. Again, feeling that when these ideas are presented to their peers, we just felt that had a much higher chance of being successful when they hear it from their peers. So a comment from one of our region secretaries on the committee, he brought it back to his ADs in his area, and he said it was one of the most positive meetings he's ever been a part of in education. And he's probably in his 70s, and just said it was great to have ADs and others talk about what are ways we can increase the respect and improve the experience for all of our participants, officials, coaches, spectators, and most importantly, our student athletes. So these are the pieces that we developed out of our consortium. And as we move forward, our plan as well is to continue to develop the consortium toolkit. And many thanks to Laura Mockentune in our office, who helped put this together and place these resources. But it's really meant to be a one-stop shop for our schools and our associations, where they can find resources for schools, for the media, for associations. And it has graphics, PSAs that we're in the process of developing new ones, presentation slides and scripts, as well as Thank a Ref and Say Yes to Officiating initiative, both PSAs and presentations that they can use at their schools, association meetings, or at their contests. So this is a look at that toolkit, and the URL for that, the address for that's at the bottom of the screen, and that's a publicly available site. So I can share that with all of you through Dana as well, and feel free to check it out and take what you want. And I would also encourage you to send me or others items that you think would be beneficial to add to this toolkit, because it's meant to be a ongoing document, one that we're constantly adding resources and pieces to help our schools, our associations, and our communities as they look at officiating, recruitment, and retention. The first piece that we have on there is the Officials Appreciation Weeks, and we'll do that in conjunction. The Thank a Ref pieces that we've been doing for quite a number of years, doing that in conjunction with Dana and the NFHS and the Thank a Ref initiative. The next piece is seasonal activity meetings. Member schools, they can use these officiating promo slides, as well as slides that talk about making contests a great experience for everyone. They can use those in their meetings with their teams prior to the season, or with associations when they send officials out to meet with teams as well. And then we have a number of officiating graphics that we will use on our jumbotrons at state tournaments, but also in social media. So on X now, Instagram, Facebook. Also, our schools can use those in any number of ways, social media or in their programs, to promote officiating as a desired avocation in their communities, as well as in our programming. And then we also have officiating recruitment posters, which we've always done, but we recently redid that. Our guide to hosting officials, which we do have, and we are going to place there. In addition, we also have another document, which is best practices for schools in not just hosting officials, but also creating a positive game environment. So we are going to post that document here as well, along with our Thank a Ref materials, which we've done Thank a Ref for 6 or 7 years, and we continually update the options there for our schools to use, all the way from just saying thanks to officials, all the way up to giving them a gift basket or a plaque or any of those kinds of things. But we've been telling our schools for quite a while that you don't need to give officials things. We're pretty simple creatures. Just saying thank you in most cases is going to be enough. At the same time, what came out of this consortium, we had an official tell our executive director at a recent tournament that he appreciated the Thank a Ref initiative and he liked being thanked before games and so forth. But his issue, and I understand and agree, was right after getting thanked, he was getting yelled at within a few minutes of the Thank a Ref piece. So just continually working with our schools on investing time with your communities, with your coaches, your spectators, on how do we treat each other, not just officials. How do we treat the opponent? How do we treat our coaches? How do we treat everyone that's involved with interscholastic competitions, knowing that this is supposed to be a connection with the classroom, that extension piece, that behaviors that we would never allow in the math classroom should not be allowed on a sideline either. And so we just need to make sure that that message continues to get shared with our schools and communities. And then finally, some officiating announcements and scripts. These are pieces, again, that member schools are encouraged to use at their contests, both for PA announcers, but also in programs or in their TV monitors at their schools. We're also encouraging them to show our PSAs as those are developed, to show those in schools, because kids are looking at those during the school day, as are parents, and that's a way to keep officiating in front of them as we move ahead. So that is our officiating toolkit and where we're putting those initiatives and resources. And again, I would encourage you to take what you would like, what you think might work for you. And I would also encourage you to submit items and share things that are working for you in your respective states. Just to give you an idea, so this is the recently developed poster and slide, and the poster has a URL code, or a QR code rather, that can be scanned easily in a locker room or in a hallway, and it takes them right to our officiating site so they can learn more about officiating in our state. So we hope that, again, reducing the barriers, reducing the number of clicks it takes to get information and to move forward, hopefully will help it get more folks into the avocation. And then finally, a piece that we have done over the last several years is an officiating recruitment forum. We've done that online via Zoom, and it's been really a painless way for officials to log in and learn more about officiating, learn more about our state and connections with our youth programming, and how do we get people involved in both youth officiating and then moving into transitioning into high school officiating. And we've found that to be really effective. We have those 3 times a year, and we've really enjoyed connecting with officials from around the state, or prospective officials from around the state, and get them involved in that initiative. And we've typically had somewhere around 100 officials, prospective officials or so at each of those. And again, we hold those 3 times a year, and we'll continue to do those as we move forward. So I just wanted to connect with you on that forum piece as well. So that's our consortium and our toolkit, and kind of the survey and kind of the pieces that led us into our consortium and our next steps as we move forward. So I would turn it back to Dana, and happy to entertain any questions that anyone has.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was excellent information. And as I'm looking at your toolkit, I'm thinking about all the things that I've got on my to-do list, and I'm just going to take yours and share those on the NFHS channel. So I appreciate you doing the legwork. Does anybody have any questions for Jason? I know he presented some great information. if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and just ask away. We'll leave this as informal as possible.
Jason, this is Louis. Curious about that last piece where you had sounded like a Zoom meetings with youth officials. How exactly did you identify those people, or did you just kind of lob it out there and whoever happened to be interested jumped on?
Sure. So I'll start from the beginning. So 3 years, well, prior to COVID, we had an AD or longtime AD who came to me and said he wanted to host a recruitment event for officials, and he had no officiating background. He just was really interested in doing that, and he was really a positive person, very contagious in that way. And we held an in-person event, and we had about 30 prospective officials, and we just told people it was out there and join us to learn more. Well, we were going to keep doing it in person, and then COVID came along and we had to adjust on the fly like all of you, and decided to move it to an online format. I think Laura is on here. She told me she might be driving, but I'll share our officiating recruitment forum URL with Dana, and she can share that with all of you. And it basically lists our speakers, it lists our agenda. I have a PowerPoint piece that I go through that kind of describes the steps of becoming an official and the benefits and so forth. And we do that online 3 times a year. We do it in July, we do it in October, and we do it in February. Kind of seasonally, we don't turn people away, but we put it out there on all of our social media channels. We put it on our website. We send it out to our ADs. We get it out to our media partners and let them know that here's an opportunity. Just get on this Zoom meeting for an hour at 6:30, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, and you can find out more about officiating, and you don't have to leave your couch. Save on windshield time. Ask any questions you want. And the great thing about that too is many of our veteran officials from across the state join that forum, and they're the ones answering all the questions in the chat. I really don't have to do much other than kind of present some league next steps, but they really connect with all of them. And our associations have been really happy with that. They're like, we get a new member or two just about every time that you host one of those. And it's just getting the messaging out in front of them in an easy to understand way, also in a way that they don't have to travel all over creation to get that information. And another piece I would throw out there is one of the times of the year that we get the most interest in officiating is typically during our state tournaments, because it has the highest number of eyeballs on our games and contests. And people will call up and say, hey, I just was at state football. I'd love to be a football official. And what's our answer all the time? Oh, come back in May, you can register then, right? Well, they don't come back. And so our plan, and we're going to open it up here at the end of, or the start of next week, we're going to open up registration for 24-25. And we're hopeful that we can get our hooks in them then. And, mainly we get their money, they register, which is a lower fee for new officials, but at least they have that connection. They paid they're going to be on the email list. They're going to get communication from us. And so then as we prepare for the new year, they're going to be part of that list already. And hopefully that keeps them interested and keeps them involved versus, hey, come back in May and register then. And we all know on this call, they don't come back. So we're hopeful that that works. To my knowledge, other state associations across the country are not doing that. Maybe there are a couple that are, but we're hopeful that will keep them involved. So I just want to throw that out there, that was kind of part of that recruitment side of things, and we're hopeful that doing it that way will allow for better retention of our recruitment. folks. So.
Good question, Louis, and even better answer, Jason. Any other questions for Jason? I think Sarah might have had something. I saw you unmute for a second.
Kind of along the same lines. Sarah Hayes from South Carolina. Just when you were picking the people for your consortium, almost kind of the same question. Did you just kind of throw something out there and you're like, yes, I want to participate, or did you guys kind of build that relationship and pick specific people for your consortium? How did you choose who you were going to have there?
Yeah, good question. I would say we were pretty strategic about who we wanted to be part of that and consortium, at least initially in this consortium 1.0. We wanted people that were committed to this cause. And so we all know who they are in our states. We know the superintendents that are supportive of trying something new, of supporting officials, of having great environments. We know the principals that are out there. We know the ADs, we know the coaches, and so forth. And so we were pretty strategic about picking superintendents, principals, ADs, coaches, region secretaries that we knew would be very committed to having an open dialogue and being supportive and positive about what we were trying to do. And Dana was there. I think she sensed that group was very much interested in having very direct conversation and, you know, sometimes being critical about some things that happen. But at the end of the day, what is best for the student participants that we're all supposed to be serving, and how do we support officials and provide them a great environment that will in turn do something well for our participants. So we chose to pick folks. I think as we move forward, I think we will expand it similar to how the NFHS did it, and allow for others that have an interest to be involved and kind of expand that pool. But we were very strategic, at least to start.
And to that point, Jason, I really did like, you know, you were strategic in the terms of you had people from different areas of the state, rural, urban, small school, big school, coach, official. You had a little mix of everything. And the conversation, you're right, at points that it was critical, but it was all, the overreaching theme of the whole day was positive experience for everybody. And I think the fact that everybody in that room was like-minded, they all had different experiences, and some of those experiences were negative, but I think the fact that they all came together with the common goal and felt like their voices were being heard, which you all are already doing the work to show that they were heard. I think that was a great first step, and everybody came together for a common cause, and that was motivating, and they all kind of fed off of each other. Even the people who were a little quiet at first when we broke into groups finally felt comfortable with talking about maybe incidents that they had with officials, and there was just a lot of learning going on in terms of, you know, things that other people might not have seen in their own school or their own backyard. So I think that being able to share those perspectives, to know what's a problem in Minneapolis may not be a problem somewhere, you know, on the outskirts of town. So I think that it was really good to share those perspectives and network and just really get to know each other. We all know in officiating, it's a relationship business. And I think so much of that day was really building those relationships and understanding how many people really do want to be a part of the solution. So it was a great event. Any other questions for Jason? Comments, thoughts? All right. Well, if you do think of something after the fact, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get it over to Jason for a response. Since I'd be guessing and he actually knows the answers, I'm happy to send them his way. But as I mentioned earlier, this will be recorded, and we'll send a copy of the recording out. I'll send the links to the toolkit to you as well, so that you've got that. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to let us know. Jason, thank you and your staff for not only putting on the consortium, but Jason, thank you for your time. For those who don't know Jason, he's a Division I official in the Big Ten. So I was excited this weekend when I got to see him on the Michigan game. It was one of those, hey, I know that guy. So I know how busy this time of the year is for you, Jason. I appreciate you taking the time to share this information with our high school colleagues. It's
No
good
problem.
stuff.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for your time and for your attendance and attention this evening. Again, any questions, feel free to shoot me an email and I'll get them to Jason. And we hope everybody has a good rest of your fall season, and we hope to see you at our next consortium in December. Have a great night.